Annie, a 33-year-old woman, wants to share a real-life experience. She was the only girl among three siblings and married her current husband against her dad's approval due to concerns about living with in-laws and caring for her supposedly blind father-in-law. Despite her dad's objections, she moved from the West Coast to the East Coast to her husband's family home. Her dad didn't think highly of her mother-in-law or husband, but her mom encouraged her to follow her heart. Initially, her husband was kind, but over time, his kindness disappeared. The power dynamics in the house favored Annie's mother-in-law and husband over her supposedly blind father-in-law. He was diagnosed as blind a few years ago and mostly stayed home. Initially, there were caregivers, but after Annie got married, her mother-in-law and husband dismissed them without consulting anyone, citing expense as the reason. Annie insisted on retaining at least one male caregiver that her father-in-law was familiar with. She argued that her husband, being a man, should assist with bathing and personal care. Reluctantly, her husband agreed to keep the male caregiver who had been helping the family even before the father-in-law's blindness. Despite this, Annie found herself neglected in caring for her supposedly blind father-in-law while her husband and mother-in-law enjoyed themselves. One day, the supposedly blind father-in-law suddenly stood up, leaving Annie wondering about what happened and contemplating confronting her husband and mother-in-law about their behavior. I'm in charge of mornings, evenings, and a whole day each week when the caregiver is off. Despite working remotely full-time for a company, my husband and his mother treat me like a substitute caregiver, expecting me to be available all the time. When I raised concerns, they dismissed it, saying, "You married into this family with a caregiving license. Manage that baggage quietly." Ironically, they referred to my father-in-law as baggage, even though his wealth covers most of their expenses. Yet, my mother-in-law mistreats him, and my husband has even expressed a desire for his inheritance sooner. Although I considered divorcing my husband, I couldn't bear the thought of my father-in-law being mistreated in my absence. On their days off, my mother-in-law and husband leave me to care for him while they enjoy themselves and spend money recklessly. Originally, my father-in-law was a significant landowner, owning properties that generated passive income. I only managed the payments, but my mother-in-law and husband would use that money as they pleased. When I discussed this with my father-in-law, he apologized, recognizing that they saw him as a cash cow. Taking care of him wasn't burdensome, but my issue was with my mother-in-law and husband, who did neither housework nor held jobs yet acted high and mighty. My frustration with the unhelpful pair intensified. Then, out of the blue, my mother-in-law and husband announced a Caribbean trip for 2 to 3 weeks, leaving me with caregiving duties. They cheerfully packed a week in advance, instructing me not to do anything unnecessary during their absence. As they happily left, I finally had a moment to relax. To my surprise, my supposedly blind father-in-law independently changed into a suit and invited me to go out. It became evident that he wasn't completely blind, though his vision was not perfect. Handing me a business card, he indicated where he wanted to go. 3 weeks later, my oblivious husband and mother-in-law returned, refreshed from their trip, complaining about the gloomy atmosphere. They suggested going to the Maldives next time, all while immediately griping about my father-in-law and me as soon as they came back. 10 minutes after their return, the doorbell rang, and I answered through the monitor. 2 men in suits were at the front door. I recognized one as James's lawyer. Mother-in-law and my husband looked puzzled. "Oh, it's James's lawyer. What brings you here?" Father-in-law walked into the living room, guiding the lawyers to chairs and sitting down himself. He seemed to walk and sit by himself, which surprised me. "You two, sit here," he instructed my husband and mother-in-law. They sat down reluctantly, eyeing the lawyer quietly. Father-in-law called me over, and I took a seat next to him. "Today, I've set up this meeting for 3 reasons. The first one is about your husband's affair." Father-in-law pulled out a photograph from an envelope, revealing my husband, my mother-in-law, and an unfamiliar woman. The intimacy in the photo clearly indicated something was going on. Who's this woman? Neither my husband nor my mother-in-law responded. More photos emerged, showing my husband with his arm around the woman, enjoying her company, and entering a hotel. The photos, taken at different times and places, painted a clear picture of infidelity. I've known about your husband's infidelity since he married you. He didn't just go to the Caribbean with the two of you, did he? He was with her too. The evidence of his cheating was undeniable. Why? How did you? My husband seemed to believe he had gotten away with it. In truth, I hadn't noticed, as between work, household chores, and caregiving, I had little time to think about it. I had assumed he was having fun outings just with his mom. Do you have anything to say to her? My husband awkwardly glanced at me, then, breaking the tension, admitted, well, if we've been found out, so be it. Yes, you're just a caregiver to him. He has a new partner now, a so-called common-law wife, if you will. My mother-in-law laughed and remarked, is this true? Even when I directly confronted my husband, he could only mumble, oh well, without attempting to explain. We've recently rented a place for just the two of them. While they're enjoying their time, I stay alone in a hotel. Don't you think she makes a better wife for my son than you, who can't even spend time with him? According to my mother-in-law, this has been going on for over a year. If you wanted to do such a thing, you should have divorced me. Oh, I did think about letting him divorce you, but she doesn't want to take care of James. So what can we do? In another couple of years, we can just put James in a facility. That's what I thought. She spoke without a hint of remorse. Hearing all this, I couldn't hide my shock and disbelief. Well, that's how it is. I'm fine with you divorcing right now. But since you'd be abandoning caregiving, don't expect any compensation in the divorce settlement. My sorrow turned to anger. Enough is enough. You can't just say whatever you want, playing with her life like it's some kind of game. Father-in-law jumped up with energy and yelled at the two of them. Husband and mother-in-law were taken aback. But you've been hiding something too. You can actually see, can't you? Otherwise, how could you walk around your room and sit down by yourself? Mother-in-law quickly retorted, that's right. You lied to us. Husband desperately tried to change the subject. It's not a lie. I did go blind, but it's partial blindness. I'm not completely blind. I've been undergoing treatments, and right now I'm at an intermediate stage. Why then did you pretend you can't see? Pretend you all assume that on your own? When I woke up one morning with bad eyesight, I went to the hospital with a home caregiver and returned in a wheelchair. It was you all who jumped to conclusions, making funny faces in front of me, thinking I couldn't see you. If you knew there was a misunderstanding, why didn't you correct us? That's not fair. The home caregiver tried to set things right, but I stopped her. I wanted to observe how things played out because it seemed like both of you were happy about my blindness. At those words, both my husband and mother-in-law looked away. It hadn't been a month since my father-in-law's blindness when I married my husband. All I knew was, my father was blind. I had assumed he was completely blind. Another topic is divorce. What my daughter-in-law and my son decide to do is up to my daughter-in-law. If needed, I can introduce you to a lawyer. However, the divorce I'm referring to isn't between the two of them. It's between you and me. Father-in-law directed his gaze straight at mother-in-law while discussing the idea of divorce. Divorce? Who even thinks about that? If we're going there, let's address the last issue. I want my money back. It turned out that father-in-law had been providing mother-in-law with a monthly living allowance. However, mother-in-law, assuming blind father-in-law wouldn't notice, had been tapping into other savings, particularly the inheritance left by my father-in-law's father. You always had a penchant for lavish spending. That's why I set up a fixed amount to be transferred to you through the home caregiver. But knowing your tendencies, I anticipated you might dip into other funds when you found out about my blindness. That's why I maintained separate accounts for my earnings and the inheritance. A year later, upon checking with the bank, it was revealed that around $60,000 had been spent in just that year. $60,000. It was astonishing that mother-in-law could squander such a significant amount of money every month. If I had that kind of money in a year, I wouldn't even know what to buy. But for mother-in-law, with her spending habits, it seems like pocket change. I can't possibly pay that back. Besides, it's my money too, right? Whether it's an inheritance or whatever, I have the right to use it as I please. You don't understand inheritance law. Even if we divorce, that inheritance won't go to you. If you can repay that money all at once, I'll let you stay, and we won't proceed with a divorce. But if you can't, consider that $60,000 as part of the property division and quietly agree to a divorce. The real estate owned by father-in-law also originally came from his father's inheritance, making it exempt from being claimed by his wife, mother-in-law, in a property division. But Dad, I realize now how wrong I've been all this time. I want to change. Can you please forgive me for everything? The husband clung desperately to his father's feet. Daughter-in-law, what will you do? Do you still want to be with this lazy cheater? No, I've come to see the light. I realize how silly it was to put up with him just because I loved him. Can you recommend a lawyer? I'll be seeking compensation in the divorce proceedings and will be divorcing him. I lost all feelings for my husband and decided to demand compensation in the divorce proceedings. At the same time, I got a divorce application from a meticulous lawyer and signed it right there. Wait a second. I don't have the money to pay any compensation. You can start a part-time job or whatever and pay it back. I'll let you stay in this house for a while because of our son, daughter-in-law. Not because he's my son, but to keep an eye on him. My husband, tears in his eyes, apologized to me and signed the divorce application and the compensation agreement. Also, I want to give you a portion of my assets as a token of my gratitude and apology. I'd rather give it to you than to my son. He handed me a copy of his will. Wait, what is this? The original's with the lawyer. I can't give it to you now. When I pass away, the lawyer will contact you at that time. I want you to accept my assets. The will stated that a portion of his property and bank deposits would be inherited by me. I can't accept this. I'd only been with them for just over a year. I haven't done anything special to deserve this from father-in-law. No, that's not true. You stood by my side and tried to protect me even when the two of them said such terrible things, father-in-law said with a gentle smile. What? Why are you giving it to that young woman? I've been with you for many more years. Quiet. What have you done for me? From the moment we got married, you left all the household chores to the help. And weren't you the same with raising our son? It was me and the maids who looked after him when he was young. I know about your affairs and that you spent money on your lovers. It's shameful what you and our son have done. Even my husband appeared surprised at father-in-law's words. Wait, Mom said it was Dad who had the affair and that she raised me all by herself. What's going on? Mother-in-law looked nervous, her eyes darting around. Do you believe James over me? It was evident to everyone that mother-in-law was lying. While my husband was taken aback, this dispute unfolded between father-in-law and mother-in-law. The truth that my husband had an affair was undeniable, and there was little sympathy for him given his own transgressions. The conversation neared its conclusion. Mother-in-law was compelled to sign the divorce papers and instructed to pack her bags and leave without resistance. Mother-in-law exited the house, and on that day, father-in-law and mother-in-law officially divorced. As for the compensation for my husband's divorce proceedings, father-in-law settled it in a lump sum, believing it would be in my best interest. My husband would repay father-in-law. I packed my belongings to return to my parents' home and arranged for them to be shipped. In the spacious house, thanks to father-in-law, my husband resided on the second floor, confined to specific areas to avoid crossing paths with me. I managed to steer clear of them for an entire month. With everything settled, on the moving day, the intercom rang, and to my surprise, my parents appeared on the screen. As I opened the front door, my father was already shedding tears, and my mother greeted me with a smile. It turned out that father-in-law had generously covered the travel expenses and made all the arrangements, Even though I had only informed my parents of my decision to get a divorce, they were well aware of the challenging year I had endured. As it happened, my father had received a call from father-in-law about 6 months after my wedding. Father-in-law, being transparent about the situation, had said, "I'll take responsibility and address the issue. I'd appreciate it if you could wait a little longer before coming to get her." Having heard the full story from mother-in-law to husband to father-in-law, my father realized that simply instructing me to return wouldn't be convincing. Accepting claims of infidelity about someone you love, especially without evidence or valid reasons, is challenging. Therefore, he chose to trust father-in-law's judgment. 2 years have passed since then, and it appears that my husband has been gradually repaying father-in-law. Thankfully, my job, which has been fully remote from the beginning, hasn't tied me to a specific location. I still maintain occasional communication with father-in-law, and my work is thriving. Despite initial concerns about growing weary of love, that hasn't been the case. I now have a boyfriend, and I'm enjoying a relaxed and happy life with my family.